incorrect fun, because if your teacher is calling me a preacher, then I had better deliver. I am Laurie-Beth Robbins, and today the pleasure is absolutely mine. How grateful am I indeed that not only have you given up your summers to accrue some curriculum credits, but you are also providing a very safe and lovely forum for me to share something that is so near and dear to my heart, and unfortunately there is not a good season or apropos time or day to bring it up and to mention it, and yet it critically must happen. The diabolical sex slavery snares and sex trafficking industries that exist today, and I'm talking about the lots that kidnap, drug, rape, drag across borders, sell women for profit, and ultimately kill our precious girls, just must be slayed. Now, before some of my gentlemen friends here today decide to tune out or to text message or to chalk this up to what must be some boring lecture that's just geared for the gals here today, do think again. Because this one today is for you as well. You see, every woman that we do meet is somebody's daughter. And she is somebody's sister, or she is somebody's wife, or she is somebody's mother, and she is somebody's friend, and she is somebody's cousin, and she is somebody's neighbor, and she is somebody's boss, and she is somebody's somebody who does matter so very deeply. Yes, every woman that you do meet does bring her own certain feminine mystique and her nurturing way and her powerful energy too, and her woman's touch on all of our path and our presence and our surroundings, and she is worthy of our keen respect. It is important that we understand that it is only when we learn to not judge, but to instead encourage the women around us. And you lovely gentlemen, you have such an integral and important role with we females too. You truly do. It is undeniable and magnificent and strong and powerful, the role you have with the women that are around you in helping to instill and foster self-esteem, in providing a feeling of safety and a calming energy of peace, encouraging women to come forward after atrocity, and so very, very, very much more. Yes, when we learn to not judge, but to instead encourage all of the women around us, we make such a difference in the world, and sometimes we do even save a human life. Yes, and if I may shed even a smattering of light on this critical issue today, if I may even help one person here think a little bit differently and act accordingly and pay it more forwardly with the awareness that they learned today from this lecture, by simply them sharing it with another person, then how very lucky am I. The gorgeous actress Sophia Loren, speaking of beautiful women, once said that mistakes are part of the dues one pays for a very full life. And I suppose if we're going to look at it that way, that when it comes to living fully, I do that one well. At age 28, I answered an ad to become an administrative assistant in Athens, Greece. Now that ad was placed in a very respected publication that was called the New York Times. And when I arrived on the other side of the world, the backdrop being the most bucolic, stunning, white stucco architecture that my eyes and my heart and my soul and my might had ever seen on calendars or in cookbooks or on coffee table albums or posters too, remarkable. And plump, succulent octopus plucked right out of the sea and thrust against rocks to be as tender as can be and grilled to perfection dawned and graced my plates. And there were palm trees that were wafting in the background in tandem with ancient ruins that spoke so masterfully of history and democracy and the birth of a nation. And far better than any boring, droning school textbook ever could, I was in Greece. And it was both breathtaking and spectacular. But the macabre spectacles that would nearly stop my breath were about to begin. And my big fat Greek adventure went from comedy to tragedy and unfathomably fast. And just as soon as I was brought up to speed that no job did really exist, I was approached by some strange men in my hotel lobby, and they knew my name, and they knew the number on my hotel room number. And they were very charming and very persuasive, and they convinced me that they were assuring that a better job was being arranged and everything would fall into place and I could stay on in the paradisiacal Mediterranean. And let me make it clear, I had fantasized about that on more than one occasion. I had always wanted to go to Greece. And now I was there, and just because something I so enthusiastically counted on didn't work out, I wasn't going to turn around when a better opportunity was going to happen. And these men were very convincing with their hospitality. Why, they paid for my hotel so that I could stay on. They wined me and dined me. They took me into their offices. They showed me their legitimate workplaces. They even had me, come on in, we're telling one story here, but it's an important one. They had me help translate or look at some faxes and explain some things in English to them. They were very convincing. They even brought me into their homes. Yes, their homes. I dined with them in their house, and I met their relatives of all ages, little ones and old yaya grandmothers, and I began to learn the language, and I tasted the delicacies. Oh yes, they built my trust, and they did it shrewdly. One of the men, or a few of them, even gave me their cell phones from time to time, because back then I didn't have one. And they encouraged me to call up my parents in America and to tell them that all was well. And so I did. One of the gentlemen even suggested that I had my folks mail me some clothes or some items if I had any other things that I needed that I wasn't able to take along in the 2 little tote bags at that time. He said, have them mail it to my office. So I did that too. Oh, they spoke a good game, and they played one as well. Because you see, to sell an American was worth some hefty coin to a lot of people, and it was worth getting right and taking the time to wait until everything was in place and certain players were in town and the right moment and the right opportunity was there. And so to stall and to build this young woman's trust and to have her at your house or do whatever it took was something that they were going to do. And over the course of a few months, when the right man was suddenly in town after some extended travel, they informed me that now my job would start, and everything now will be absolutely okay. Instead, I was raped. And I was taken by a group of Balkan men, Serbian, Albanian, Bulgarian, and Greek. And I was flown from Athens, Greece, to the north up near a border, in a town called Thessalonica, which to the locals was referred to as Saloniki. And I was put in a very despicable and seedy hotel. And when I got into my hotel room, where I was put alone, thankfully, I immediately locked the door. But you know, it was the damnedest thing. Because a couple of men, with a little help in that particular hotel, they had double keys. And they let themselves into my bedroom at night, and they put a needle in the back of my neck so that I would take a little nap or go to sleep or not scream or not fight or not run, when they had quite a transaction planned across a border the next day with a lot of cashish involved for a lot of people, and they didn't want me to screw it up. They didn't want me to jump out a window, as some girls had done, I later did learn. You see, those gals had weighed their options. And they had looked at the lesser of two evils, and they had decided that to take their own lives, which they successfully did, was better than whatever was to come. So there I am in this seedy little place. But I will say that that little sleeping aid of whatever it was, oh, it did the trick, because I did sleep. and I slept soundly. In fact, when I awoke, I didn't remember much, but I could barely move my neck without galvanizing agony and pain with even the smallest increments. But I had slept, that was for certain. I had slept remarkably well, and sadly to this day, I will confess that that is the last time that I fully slept. That morning, when I awoke and I threw up and I threw up and I threw up and I threw up, with each gesticulation hurting my neck more. But I was having a reaction to whatever little concoction I was given, you see. And I took a little compact that I had in my bag, and I went into the yucky bathroom in that hotel room, and I looked at the back of my neck, and there was a very large, engulfed, inflamed, red, big bullseye that, I don't know, just looked a little too big to be a mere tick bite. So I took my little knapsack pocketbook, and I didn't hear much going on, and I tiptoed down those stairs, and right in the small quarters was a desk and a strange guy sitting at the hotel who stared at me with a weird look, and to my right were these beaded curtains, and the men were in there, and I was demanded to come in. And when I came in there, what I saw was a man doctoring up and changing a license plate, a car license plate. He was cutting and pasting different numbers on it. He was changing it. And the gentleman told me what he's doing, you see, he had too many traffic tickets. That was it. And he had to change his license plate before we all were going to take a little drive across a border, and my new job was about to begin. Well, in an instant, and as they spoke in Serbian and they were babbling, and they uttered the word putan. And because I have this really weird, uncontrollable habit of learning languages, foreign languages, really rapidly, my love of languages and of gourmet food may have been what saved my life, and just by a hair. Because when I heard putan, I knew even from the gourmet dish, pasta puttanesca, you know, the one with olives and capers and anchovies and all that lovely stuff. Well, pasta puttanesca is, of course, rumored to have hailed from eons ago when the prostitutes made this savory aroma and red sauce that lured in the men from the smell, and that's how they got the jobs. So anything with the word putana or any derivative of that in multiple languages means hooker. And I knew that. And in an instant, everything made sense. All of the stalling and the lies and meeting the family and the trust building and waiting for a certain person to come to town, and everything was flashing before me and suddenly made sense. Do you understand Serbian, Laura? One of them asked me at that moment. They never did pronounce my name properly. And I just played dumb, and I said, no. But by then, I did speak enough. And I did know enough. And I could understand enough. And my gut was telling me enough, that I had to get the fucking hell out of there if there was any way on earth to do it. And I said that I had to get something in my room and that I had to go to the bathroom. And I walked upstairs, and once again I locked that door. And once again, another man, the one they had been waiting for, who finally had arrived, he had a key. And he let himself in, and I was raped by him too right then and there. And that man laughed when he did the oral forced entry that he did first. And at that time, back then, I was wearing this red lip gloss or red lipstick while I was in Greece that I liked. And he saw all the red lip gloss smeared all over his stomach and groin and around his legs from the movement he had created. And he thought that was very funny. Yeah. Pretty yucky stuff. He then went into the disgusting bathroom in that room, and he used the funny little makeshift, if you could call it a shower. It had a small handle, and he cleaned himself off, and he was still laughing. And he was still smiling. And then he said, Laura, come downstairs very soon because we're going to go. Shell shock, out of my mind. I took my little knapsack. I did not take the 2 bags that I had brought to Greece or my fur coat that I had actually traveled to Greece with, ironically enough. I just took my knapsack bag. And I walked out of the room and I tiptoed down those stairs and I prayed that I would be given the guidance of what to do to live. And by the grace of God, when I got to the bottom of the stairs, for the first time since I had been there, the man with the crummy look at the front desk was carrying the smallest coffee cups I've ever seen in my life through those beaded curtains with the thickest, murkiest coffee I've ever seen in my life with spoons in it, because I think one would have to chew it to have that kind of coffee. But he was walking in there and the men were smoking galore now in the morning, just an hour later. They're smoking galore, cigarettes, and they're twirling their worry beads, these necklaces that this culture would play with round the clock nervously every day. The irony of that, not lost on me one bit. But they're twirling their worry beads and they're smoking and they're still futzing with the license plate and they're busying themselves and they're babbling in Serbian. And in my moment of opportunity right then, I ran. And I ran and I ran and I ran. Yes, a non-athlete, and in 4-inch strappy black sandals, no less. And in the crumbled, soiled, dirty clothes that I had put right back on me, no cleaning up for me, because, you know, I couldn't even bring myself to get into that gunky basin of a bathtub, especially where that pig had just rinsed himself off. I just threw my clothes on and I got out of there. And I ran to a very giant hotel that seemed much nicer by the outside appearance. And I, in my state of mind, approached strangers. And in a very long and convoluted way, I did get home. And today I am still here. Even though I went to the American consulate and got absolutely zero help from them. And I was frozen in my tracks to call my parents with this. I could not do that to them. Not as a 28-year-old woman, not at any age, at that tender time that I felt, because I couldn't even then quite look at myself in the mirror and understand and accept without shame or guilt or confusion how I had allowed this to happen and not wanted to see all along what was in the works in that pretty, pretty land where I was so excited to be. But I did get home. And thankfully, having relied on the kindness of strangers, so to speak, I now have a mission and a life's work and a focus and an obligation, since I was spared, to pay that forward and to come forward with my story if it may help save another human life. I know that now that I am mature enough to face it, to talk about it, to deal with it, that I have to do that. Yes, somebody was looking out for me on what may indeed be the luckiest day of my life. And therefore, I cannot think of myself as a victim, if you will, but instead as a lucky, 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 lucky lady indeed. But before the wonderful movies Taken with actor Liam Neeson, and before all this awareness about this topic, I couldn't fathom that this really took place in the world, and certainly not to me. And so I suppressed my story. And I suppressed it and didn't talk about it just as much as I possibly could. And I did suffer from that silence so greatly as well. Because you see, rape must go somewhere. It is impossible for even a zealously upbeat and bright woman, a lover of life, someone who is in touch with their sexuality and their femininity and their sensuality before such an atrocity, and coming from such a warm and wonderful and loving home, it is impossible for even a woman like me to come out of such a heinous happening unscathed and whole and perfect without a modicum of post-traumatic stress disorder whatsoever, it is impossible to walk away from something like that and to just be fine. And since I didn't do kickboxing, and so I wasn't channeling this via some endorphin rush via sports, if you will, and I didn't go directly into work-related topics with this cause where I could heal and deal and help others at the same time, and so it wasn't being taken care of that way, and I didn't get therapy, although much later I did date and sleep with a psychiatrist and a psychologist, not at the same time, mind you, but that brings up the point that I did not swear off sex after Greece, because I was in touch with my sensuality before this, and I would be damned if I was going to throw that power away to what some pigs had done. No, life had to move on. Love had to move on. Lust had to move on. All of those things had to happen. But since I didn't do a lot of talking when on the couches of those shrinks, so to speak, I didn't get the help that I so deeply needed. And I didn't face it. And I didn't address it. And in fact, I wasn't even really admitting it. It's not the kind of thing you just want to bring up at a cocktail party, is it? No, it's not a pretty story. And so as a result, I didn't sleep. That's where mine went, predominantly. I didn't sleep, and I couldn't sleep. And I became very terrified of the things that go bump in the night, so to speak, and I had imagery of men with double keys coming into the room. And after 17 years of not sleeping, yes, and of drawing in the wrong men and the wrong matches for me again and again and again with this repetition, compulsion, having a misuse of me either verbally or emotionally, or dating a cast of obfuscating characters who misled me for their own selfish desires, and me sticking around and allowing it to happen, because I was trying so much to right a wrong that I wasn't even facing. I was trying so much to fix something and think if it starts out crummy, I can make it better. I can make something bad loving. I can make it sexy. I can make it wonderful. It was my passive-aggressive way of trying to fix something that I couldn't even face. And after a near 2 decades of expelling all that wasted loving energy and nudging these defunct romances and trying to make them work when they just couldn't, instead of being myself and drawing in a real healthy balance for who I really am, coupled with my epic absence of sleep, at that point this year, I stood up at age 45, pretty exhausted, and tired of not sleeping. Yes, tired of being tired, to call it what it is. And I realized, yes, with a little age and a little life experience does come a tiny bit of wisdom, kind of like a fine wine, right, that just needs to be put in the right environment and served in the right glass so that it can properly showcase what it really came there to do and what it masterfully can be. But I realized and recognized now that I cannot be a proper partner to anybody or a participatory link in a career and service way, in a wonderful way in our great cycle of life, if I do not come forth with my story and, alas, help people and fulfill the obligation, since I was spared, and I count my lucky stars and thank God every second of every day. I realized that that is the only way to right this wrong. That is the only way, bar none, to heal and to deal and hopefully sleep, but also help other people in the process. Nothing is accomplished by bottling that in. That doesn't help me, and it certainly doesn't help save another human life out there too. But you see, we women have a horrible time coming forward with such a story. We don't come forward, because to retell and rethink and relive and rehash and revisit such a thing is to be re-victimized all over again. And quite frankly, we had our surfeit of it on round 1. Or maybe we don't come forward because perhaps somebody will judge. And they'll look at us as dirty or tainted or used or damaged goods or unlovable. Or we don't come forward because maybe the men who are called out will get angry and they'll come back. We don't come forward because maybe our poor families might become embarrassed or ashamed and they won't know what to say to those who ask. We don't come forward because of the typecast and the label and the stigma that is attached to women today, because if the tattoo on the lower back is called a tramp stamp by the masses, which I have never understood, but if that's what they call a little bit of body art, then what in the colorful hue of vocabulary and judgment will they call this thing that happened? We don't come forward because somebody will say that we're miserable, we're jaded, we're bitter, we're a man-hater, we're shut down, we're closed for business and love altogether. We don't want any touch ever again, not even a hug. Why, some people, they pack on 300 pounds after this kind of horror so that they will have emotional and physical armor and they will never ever again be seductive in the eyes of men and have to endure such raging hell. We don't come forward because someone will say you're a sad sack who wants attention. You're feeling sorry for yourself. You're a victim. You're a downer. You're a buzzkill when you bring up a topic like that. And I don't want to be that. Not to anybody, no. We don't come forward because somebody will say, you deserved it. You wear sexy things. You slept with some men. You flirt. Well, let me tell you something. That doesn't mean you want to be drugged and raped and sold and dragged across a border and killed, never to be found or heard from again. No, wearing sexy clothes does not beg and merit the other. Feeling good in your body and in touch with your sexuality does not mean that you want death. We don't come forward. We don't come forward because somebody, while you're wrestling with it and you're grappling with the pain and how to face it and what to do, somebody will even say that they don't believe you. And that you probably made it all up. We don't come forward because something extra creepy and extra gross and extra, especially for us, is extra hard to talk about. It's not an easy one. It's not light. We don't come forward because, you know, it's nobody's damn business. And they won't understand. No, it's not a beautiful thing to recount, but that does not negate the fact that someone is a beautiful woman who does count and who has something very beautiful to give to the world in a very wonderful way. No, it's not a sexy thing to talk about, but that does not mean that a woman who has been raped can never again feel sexy or wear something sexy, or that there is anything in any way, shape, or form wrong with that. Just because somebody was taken does not mean that they have nothing left to give. And just because something really, really horrible on so many levels did happen, does not mean that life itself is crummy, or that life isn't worth living, or that life sucks, or that everything is bad, or that life is anything short of a magnificent God-given luxury and celebration and special occasion, and on every certain day. I do count my lucky stars to be alive every day. I am grateful, and I do realize now that I have an obligation to pay that forward. And ladies, you must be aware that this evil facet of life when you are overseas and abroad does come in mysterious costumes that you will not see coming when you are in a foreign land and you are not in your familiarity zone and you don't even want to see it. You want to see vacation and a fun new opportunity. You're not on your turf. There are different languages involved. It's coming at you in a different light that you may not recognize. And gentlemen, you need to know, too, that you can help every day to help your female contemporaries feel great about themselves and feel safe and feel secure and be educated that these nightmares do happen, not just in the movies, but that these really do happen. Men pose as bosses. They pose as boyfriends. Do you know they even send in women today? They have female recruiters who go in because that's a little more convincing to girls. And the ladies lure the women into the lairs, and you don't see it coming. All kinds of promises are made. And so to travel abroad alone or with a gal pal or even a gaggle of girls may be a mighty dangerous thing. And so what if, by contrast, we just encourage people to come forward? We just encourage people to make a difference. No, it may not be the story that I wanted, not by any stretch, but it is in the glory. If you're going to call me a preacher, I better bring it, right, and not disappoint. It is in the glory of action that happens when we as women and men who are supportive of women do come forward, and when they share their stories. And that is the only way, not by silence, not by suppressing. That is the only way to make a difference. You know, a woman that I admire, her initials are CO, and she wrote, "Do what scares you the most, and then watch as your life turns excellent," or something like this, or that's how I interpreted her words, and I have benefited greatly from her wise and wealthy comment in that regard. And I would like to believe in a very small way that I have done just that here today. But far more importantly than me doing anything for myself is me moving forward and fulfilling the obligation, having been spared, having been one of the lucky ones, being so blessed to still be here, and being able to help make a difference. And I'm finally writing the book that I came here to write about it all. And I will research and follow the diabolical fiefdoms of the sex slavery snares and sex trafficking industries, and to the gates of hell if need be, if it means that by me coming forward with my story, I may help even one young beautiful woman to be aware and awake and alive. I am Laurie-Beth Robbins, and today the pleasure was absolutely mine. Thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity. Thank you. I want to leave some time for your questions, and I'll let you shut that off, my friend. Thank you.